BitSwap is the hottest new way to trade tokens. Crawling all the top decentralized exchanges, BitSwap will get you the very best price and value for your trades. BitSwap is changing the game. Try it now at bitswapdex.com.
Welcome to Rice TVX and the latest transmission of Stranger Than Fiction. On today's show, I am joined by returning guest Peter Wilson from the YouTube channel 2021 Return to Democracy. Now, since Peter is a returning guest, this is his second appearance, and I will have links down below and above for his first time on the show. Before we get into it, make sure you visit ricetvx.com and sign up for my mailing list so you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. Plus, you can find my social media links, contact information, get Rice TVX merch coming soon via the shop, and more. If this is your first time ever watching any of my videos, check out and explore my channels. Make sure you subscribe to Rice TVX and Rice TVX 2. Both can be found on YouTube. And hit the notification bell to get alerted to new videos. Also, you can follow me on Odyssey and Library, where I have my full catalog of videos plus extra content. And you can also find Rice TVX on BitChute. If you want to support Rice TVX and what I do directly, I have my PayPal, Cash App, plus my cryptocurrency addresses via my Cointree link below in the video description. You can also join my Patreon channel, where you will get early access to some of my videos, exclusive content, and more, with 4 different levels of membership, all offering something different. If you are looking to purchase and invest in precious metals, gold and silver are both good safe haven assets to hedge against the financial collapse we are experiencing. Check out Money Metals Exchange. I partnered up with them and you can get a free half ounce of silver. Visit moneymetals.com, be a first time buyer, purchase a minimum of $100, and use the promo code RICE. You get a free half ounce of silver, and it's another way to support the channel. I will include links down below for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything I talk about on today's show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, returning on today's show is Peter Wilson from the YouTube channel 2021 Return to Democracy. He was actually on about 16 days ago, maybe 17 days ago. It was when we recorded our first conversation together, and I released that last week. Today we're recording on the 8th of December of the 12th month. And this will be our second conversation together. We're going to have links down below for everything that we talk about on today's show. But Peter, I appreciate accepting my invitation to come back on, especially so soon. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me on again. I truly appreciate it. It's great to chat and to help everybody along with their knowledge on law and et cetera.
All that good legal fiction stuff. Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to the conversation. And we got a lot of good feedback from the first time that you were on. We talked a lot about history, especially when it came to popes and the Catholic Church and the Cestui Que Vie's really good explanations. And today I kind of wanted to do a little deeper dive and get a little bit more knowledge from you as far as like some of the things that you've learned about in legal fiction and law versus legal, private versus public. But you had mentioned before we started recording, we were having a little chat. You mentioned that earlier today, not too long ago, that you were doing a mock court session. You want to talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, literally, when you had mentioned the term there, what between legal and lawful. So on the mock court session, basically what it is the guy who's obviously got all the knowledge is trying to trick you, right? When you're going in to hold a court of law, he's trying to trick you to give jurisdiction to become legal. You see? So this is how you play it. So, and it's really good practice for when you're talking to any kind of official, when they will always, even if they don't know it, right? I'll explain that a little bit later, but they're always going to try and legally entrap you to accept the title of anything except a man or a woman. Okay, and that's how we have to stand in this court, especially where we're literally practicing. So it's like a game, which is fantastic when you think about it, because everything in court and everything in legal is a game. So you're in court because you're playing the game and you're knocking the ball backwards and forwards, right? So, you know, the whole essence of this part is when we're going in as a man. And this is the whole essence. So obviously if it's a woman, but like, you know, I'm a man. So I'm going into court to stand as a man. So I have to make sure that I accept no titles and I always bat the ball back into their side of the court. So to do that, you always have to remember that a big thing is to be acting as a king, okay, which is like asking as king, asking questions. So always like give them a question back when they question you, or try and get you to accept it. And it's learning. It's like literally learning. Let's just say, I don't know, German language, because it's a truly different language. And the hardest thing is, though, the way that it's all written. They will read it out to you as it's written, but it's written and can be spoken. The written word can be spoken as English. But when they say it to you, they're actually speaking like either dog Latin or glossa or legalese, depends on which term you want to use. But they're all kind of in that similar frame. You know, I'm not getting political on it or anything like that.
Well, I mean, I recommend the channel Justinian Deception a lot, and those terms are mentioned. I mean, it's good for basic knowledge of understanding this. So, I mean, back in the Roman Empire, we had regular Latin. I would call it the high form of Latin, and that's what the wealthy used. Also, the political powers that be would use. But then they had a debased form of Latin, which was called dog Latin. That was meant for the regular people, and it was meant to, for my opinion, history was to kind of keep those people in the dark, maybe even just be stupid, because they don't know what the words mean in the sense that they were meant to be meant, and they just think they mean what's socially accepted. But then you fast forward to today, and I've come to this conclusion that the English language is just a modern form of dog Latin, and the legalese language that we see in the court systems that's being utilized. When people talk about the word person being a corporation, that is a legalese term. Obviously, the socially accepted norm definition of the word is, someone like myself and yourself. But if you were in a court of law or a legal court saying that you are a person, then you are claiming to be a corporation, an artificial entity. So there is that separate language, and it has carried over. It's just they have failed to mention that to the general public. Mm-hmm. So that when we go to court, we're assuming that the language that we use in everyday social norm accepted definitions means the same thing in court, and it doesn't always apply that way. So just to kind of, because I mean, it's not getting political. To me, it's like one of the basis of this deception, of the trickery of getting us to be this artificial legal entity, this straw man, this legal fiction.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning it like, and that's just like some people that say, oh, it's definitely dog Latin. Others people say it's definitely glossa. I'm not bothered about the name, but it's definitely deception. That's for sure. And I do like Romley Stewart, who does the Justinian Deception. They speak about like that a lot.
And well, his partner has been locked up. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and they moved him, I think, 16 or 17 times because he wouldn't give joinder.
And so he's still locked up. I don't even know if they've charged him with anything, because at the last time I spoke with Romley, he wasn't even actually charged with anything. So Romley's Romley's a little bit, and he's mentioned it in videos lately, he's a little terrified about continuing the course of Justinian deception and how it might affect, not him, but he's got family, he's got kids. He's worried about, because he said that there's already law enforcement has already kind of been messing around with his family already. So
and what he's
I don't
doing,
mean to interrupt. I was just wanting to put that out there. I love Romley Stewart. I love Justinian Deception, and try to support them as much as I can.
But I mean, what he's doing and what he's talking about there is really everything that I was talking about, from like the establishment of the Holy Roman Empire, which was like 800 AD, like which was December the 25th, 800 AD. So celebration of Christmas. That's when they crowned, what do you call him, Charlemagne as the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. 25th of December, 800 AD. Yeah.
I didn't know that. 800 AD specifically?
800 AD. Because what they've done is like the usage of the words, the Holy Roman Empire, seem to like, I don't know what you would class it as, disappear for sure anyway. And then they brought it back in to be used, excuse me, again from 800 AD. And that was Pope Leo III, which I've done a lot of research on. And I was disappointed I couldn't find him like untied to a black nobility name, you know, which they're not all black nobility, because there are different popes that were put there by different people. But it is good when you can find like a direct link, you know, to one of those names, but definitely wasn't him. He was actually, I think, from the Byzantine Empire, which was what the Holy Roman Empire, what was the Byzantine Empire, right next to Constantinople from Emperor Constantine, right?
Yeah, but Justinian would have been a part of that whole empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so like you had the first Justinian one, if you call it that, yeah. Right? And then it was again Justinian II, who was linked to Pope Leo's family, Pope Leo III's family. That's why I thought, oh, that's interesting. Go down there. And then it was like he re-established the term the Holy Roman Empire by giving it to Charlemagne and creating that emperor again.
I didn't know that that took place on December 25th, 800 AD. That's an interesting fact. You know a lot of interesting information. That was what I was telling you before we started recording. You were like really knowledgeable in the Catholic Church, and you know, it definitely seems like all roads do lead back to Rome when it comes to this.
Yeah, I tell you, we just had a celebration, and I don't know what it was. I never watched television, but I got another good guy. He's always sending me clips of stuff and everything. He's 100% decoder. That's all he does. He doesn't do anything. I don't think he's got anything except that. I don't mean that rude about him. He's brilliant, right. And he sends you some stuff, and you're just looking at it and thought, wow, that must have took months to do. And he's got this image there, and there's Boris Johnson, who's like the UK Prime Minister, and he's shaking hands with I can't remember his name, but now the what do you call it? The Rothschild family's head now in England, the old man, not the one that you see who does all the interviews, and right behind them, which why you would ever have this at all, is a Roman soldier standing in full Roman uniform with a spear, you know, and a shield, full, you know. This is just all decoding everything. You know, they always say they're going to hide it in plain view, and they're showing you we're all under the Roman Empire. We always have been, and we always will be. I don't think we always will be, but that's what they're trying to push. And this was recently, you know. So it's all tied together. Excuse me.
No, you're fine. I know you're getting over being sick. Do you see any ties when it comes to like where the ties that from the city of the Vatican City to the city of London? Where does that connect?
Well, you know, it would be hard to like get like a book which wouldn't be written by somebody like me, if you understand my meaning, because they're not going to write it and say, oh, true. By the way, you know what I mean? So it's just the significant things that you can tie, you know, as what we were mentioning before, is that it's always been a pope that has actually authorized. First of all, I think I might have said it last time, the invasion of England itself in 1066 by what do you call it, the Normans, which was William, right? Because they lost the bloodline in England, which I think they were trying to establish the city of London then, and I mean this city as it is the state now, right? And they lost the bloodline because when the I said it last time, when it was Edward the Confessor, they called him. He died without an heir, right? Then they actually voted a king in, as they used to do under Saxon law, right? So they were like, oh, hang on, right? But it was a pope who sent, get over there. So they sent the Normans in. Now, here's a strange thing. If you look at the Normans right? And they're all French, and people, I even speak to people now, they don't understand that for like well over 100 years, most of England was speaking French because it was ruled by the French. The Normans were French, and all of the castles that they built, and I'm surrounded by them here, it's got to be easily half an hour distance to 10 to 12 castles, all Norman, all massive stone buildings, and they all spoke French, right? But they were only in France. They're not French. Okay, so they were called Normans because they were coming from the north, right? And they were called Normans up north because they were Vikings. But when you were looking at the design of the ship, and I know this is going really out there, you've got to really get into it in depth and study it. But if you look at the architecture of the shipping, they're Phoenician ships, right? So just, anybody's interested, if you want to go and have a check later on, go and have a look at the old Phoenician ships, right? The PH Phoenician, and have a look at the shape of them. And then have a look at the Norman, or right further up, the actual Viking ships. It's the same design. Whereas, like, in England, they didn't have anything like that. They just didn't have that type of shipping.
So you're saying the Viking ships are the same or similar to the Phoenician ships?
Phoenicians, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it was a comment on our last conversation or not, but somebody had told me to check out this Netflix show called The Last Kingdom. And I think I tried to watch it before and just didn't really have any interest, but I'm going to try to rewatch it because someone explained that it really gives a good historical viewpoint of the Normans and the Saxons.
Well, what they would do, this is way before that, to be honest, right? What they were talking about was, because I mentioned last time about half of what is England now was actually called Daneland, because it was under rule by the Danish, and the Danish again were Vikings, as what would be classed as Vikings. You got Swedish, the Danish, and the Norwegian. That all came from Scandinavia, and that was the area where you would have the Norsemen or Northmen, and that would be classed as Vikings. So that program you're talking about, which I've watched all of it and I've read all of the books and then tied it into the real history, was about a castle. I've just been saying castles all around here. The what do you call it? The capital of Northumbria, right? This is now. If you imagine, well, it's hard to like, but I'm in Northumberland, which is the top county in England. So Scotland is literally there. I can see, when it's a clear day, I can see the Cheviot Hills, which are the border between England and Scotland. I can see it from my house. So only about like half an hour up the road is what's called Bamborough Castle. But it used to be called Babenberg Castle.
Babenberg?
Babenberg, yeah. And it's been a fortress like since they think around like 400-500 AD. And definitely from 600 AD. And that is when, right, that they're actually talking about between 600 onwards from Babenberg. And that's where that program was. And it was showing you the invasions of the Danish when they actually did take over most of England. So Babenberg, or the north here, right where we live, this was all ruled by the Vikings, and their excuse me, capital, they moved a little bit, about an hour and a half south of me, to York. It's got a funny name, can't remember, but I've been there before, and it shows you this huge big city. They dug it all up when they were doing some working in York, and it's a massive Viking city. Jorvik, Janine's just shouted through from it. Jorvik is what it's called.
Cool.
And but that's what it was. So like all of imagine the if you're looking at it, the eastern side, all of the eastern side of England was all Danish. And it was for a long time under King Canute. And what it was what do you call it? The king that they were showing on this program he's talking about. It is good to watch. Who was Alfred, who was the Saxon king, or English, whichever one you want to go with, and he kind of saved them from taking the rest of England, by going and hiding in the swamp. Not very
Nice.
brave in the swamp. And
Now,
I
was
think
England at
he's
one
most
point,
famous for burning the cakes, I think.
was there a Doggerland or something like that prior to the England, or are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Something about the word like,
The only thing I know is like further up north where there's actually a bank of, it's actually on the sea. It's called Dogger's Bank, but I don't know anything apart from that.
let me see here.
But yeah, you had Daneland, which was all of that side. So that's what they're actually talking about on there.
On a Wikipedia, Doggerland was called Dogger Littorai or Littoral. It was an area of land now submerged beneath the southern North Sea that connected Great Britain to continental Europe.
All right, well, that's what they call Dogger's Bank. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, no, it does. And it does say Doggerland was named after the Dogger Bank, which was in turn named after the 17th century Dutch fisher boats called doggers.
Oh,
interesting.
Yeah, it's a big fishing field now, or it was when I was in the Navy.
Well, that's what they were saying. The whole area was named because of fishing boats that were called doggers. So that's kind of an interesting fact to learn. Cool. And so I'm pulling up a link to your. I'm doing a screen share with your YouTube channel. So if somebody is watching this and hasn't seen our first conversation, which is linked down below, I am encouraging people to head over to your YouTube channel and make sure they subscribe. And if you head at my channel, you'll see the green thumbnail from the first conversation that we did. That was posted, I want to say like the 2nd of December or something like that, 2nd or 3rd of December. So just a little over a week ago. And this video will come out early next week, but it's recorded on the 8th of December. So you mentioned legal, law and legal. You know, that was one of my questions I wanted to ask you, because it definitely seems to be two different animals.
Yeah.
But yet they seem to make them seem like they're the same animal.
Yeah, well, this ties in as well, and again, it would be up to others to research to find out what I'm saying is linked. If you go back to the Justinian deception, and he talks a lot about their ideas about what Justinian was doing came from the word God, because Justinian was realizing that everyone was worshiping God, but it was like he was like saying that God was the grantor of dominion. So he wanted to be G-O-D, the grantor of dominion, i.e. if he grants it, then he can also take it away from man. You see?
Grantor of dominion. Well, also I've heard the word God comes from a German word, I believe, pronounced gut or something like that. And it was supposed to be like similar to gut. So when we talk about gut feeling.
Oh, okay.
But that kind of comes into bastardized language. But
yeah,
grantor of dominion is pretty cool. I'd never heard that. Grantor of dominion.
But so what they're saying is this is where it's coming in, the grantor of dominion, and dominion we're talking about man, right, or person, really. So everything that they've ever said was they're trying to trick it with this language, which we know it's so apparent, that there's no getting away from it. So and everything that you research comes back to show you that you are a person or a slave of Rome, which is what was declared, like, by those papal bulls that we spoke of last time. But basically what it is like we have law, right? Now, people say, oh, it's common law, and we have common law. But then they get confused, because I have people telling me, like, oh, I live under common law. And so, well, what does that mean? So I'm protected under common law. Well, explain it. What does that mean? And they're like, well, it's common law. Right. You can't touch me. And so I'm pretty sure they can.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. It's what's common in it. It's what's common in the land that's being utilized in the law, and that can change. And right now, our common law is technically commerce contract law.
Well, that's exactly what it is. But
statutory law. The
term itself, common law, comes from like 1154, like in Henry II of England, right? And basically, he had the whole of the country had their own laws. This lord would have his land set up. Well, it's my law. I'm going to do what I want. And the same, and the same, and the same. So what he did is he took his court with his chancellor, which is still in place today in the Chancery Court in London. Now, he traveled the country holding court where everybody could come and bring their cases and whatever it was, you know, against, oh, my lord's being nasty to me, or my neighbor stole my cow, and everything like that. So, and what he'd done was he said, it has to be the same for every town or every shire in England.
Has to be uniform.
Yeah, exactly.
Uniform, almost like what they did with the commercial code.
Yeah, exactly.
So I had to add a little humor into that.
It was, yeah, but we can't say that. Oh, we get killed. But it was law common to all. Okay, which is what they were trying to say. So there's not a magic like button you can press, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm in the common law, and that's me. And, like, you know, the law is the law, but there's also the legal, and you have to really and you have to study it, because it's so tricky, and it's purposely done to be tricky. And what they're doing now, if you imagine, it's got I tell you what, a good analogy. Here's your scales, right? Law and legal. Okay, they're actually doing this, and they're tipping it, right, so that this is legal coming up and law is going down. There's your scales. All right, so imagine it like that. All right, that's a good analogy of them, because you always see the scales, don't you, of justice, and they're always flat like that, aren't they? But it's never that case when you have to try and deal with it. But
no, it's not. It's not. I've actually had to deal with a situation where the state, in this case, it would be the Commonwealth of Virginia, because there's a few states that are still under the Commonwealth law, which is more just kind of like the old law that's similar, more like what they have in the UK. And they didn't remove information from the system, and I had a warrant out for my arrest when I should not have had a warrant out for my arrest. And it caused me several issues when I was arrested because of it. And I couldn't even sue the state in any capacity, or the Commonwealth, because they had what they called clerical immunity, which just meant that they were allowed to make mistakes.
Okay. Well,
but now, if it was the other way around and I would have made a mistake, then, you know, they would have had no problem with arresting me, putting me in jail, fining me, or whatever the situation might be. But it's okay for them to make a mistake.
Yeah, but this is, I'll just ask a couple of questions here. This is on law. Okay, so obviously I don't know, and I bet you don't know, because you'll never ask them. Was it a lawful, not legal, was it a lawful warrant?
I would say no, because it was based on a driving charge, which we know the argument of traveling versus driving. Mm-hmm. So I could go back to the argument of it's lawful for me to travel. You say it's illegal for me to drive without a license, but it's lawful for me to travel.
Just a bit of paper, though. Just a bit of paper. The actual warrant. Just that bit of paper. How did they serve it? How did they do an arrest?
They were unable to serve it to me until I got arrested, or until I committed what was considered to be a violation of their laws on the street, which the police monitor via our Department of Motor Vehicles. So I think in one case I was speeding, and they pulled me over for speeding, for going fast. And because I was speeding, they got my license, or they thought they had my license. They had my ID because I didn't have a driver's license. I haven't had a driver's license for quite some time. So if somebody was to look up my criminal record, which somebody in the legal fiction space has already done, it's multiple pages of me driving with a revoked license or without a license, which just basically says I've been trying this whole traveling versus driving thing for quite some time and haven't really had any success. Some police officers will be cool, and then some won't. So it's hard to find. Nothing is consistent. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry for the long answer.
No, that's totally fine. It's just because, like, if you have a warrant, right? For them to actually arrest you on that warrant, it has to be lawful, and they have to have it, right? This is the whole thing. It's not even legal to arrest you if they haven't got the warrant, right? This is the thing. So, but nobody knows that, so you're not going to question that. So, like, there's lawful and legal, but sometimes they're both unlawful and illegal, and they don't care. And I bet you the police don't even realize as well. So, for them to arrest you on the warrant, they have to have the warrant, and it has to be signed in a wet ink signature by a judge. And they also have to have a hazard bond to issue the warrant. If they haven't got a hazard bond, right, and something ridiculous like he falls over and smashes your car for so, they can get sued beyond belief,
right?
Unless they have a hazard bond. All right. Now all of that has to be in place for them to do any kind of arrest whatsoever. So, you know, and I know that what they do is they show the films and the TV programs where, like, you know, the cops come and they smash down the front door and they run in and they're arresting anyone, but it's usually for something pretty nasty, right? It's not because you were driving without a license. It's because you've, you know, robbed a bank of a couple of million, or you've murdered somebody, or something along those lines.
Something that's harming people.
Exactly. But also you can guarantee that if it was real, you know, if this was a true arrest and a true warrant for somebody who had harmed, then they will 100% have a wet ink signature on a real paper warrant with a hazard bond supporting it as well, in case they burst in there to try and get the guy who was a multiple murderer, who deserved to get arrested and murdered, and they accidentally killed a kid by doing it. So I have to have a hazard bond in place to be able to do that type of things, you see.
Okay.
That makes it a lawful warrant, even in the world of legal.
By having the insurance.
The insurance, the hazard bond, and also the wet ink signature on the paper by a judge, a real judge. All right. And, you know, all of these things that you talk about, driving and everything like that, you know, like none of them ever have that. And if you know, and to be able to stand as a man and be in law compared to arguing on legal, because everyone just goes into legal, you see, and that's and they start talking legalese as well without even knowing it, and you've actually like given them jurisdiction over you, and you're finished.
Which happens a lot. Which happens more times than people realize, like you were mentioning it. People are constantly giving. That's why you should say as little as possible, and not really, like you were saying, you want to be asking questions. You want to be standing as king. So asking questions and not really answering questions, because answering questions could be putting you in a whole different predicament because of the way that you answer questions.
But, you know, I mean, it's like,
and they do say what you say can and will be used against you in the court of law.
Yeah. But you can do it with being polite and being friendly as well. Whereas I think what a lot of people get confused and they get angry straight away, you know, and or you know, you see protesters and everything just saying that because of the times we're in, you know, and they're already on either in a defensive or an aggressive manner. So they're going in there with the questions in a bad way, you know. Whereas, like, obviously we have to be able to stand and not get confused between acts and statutes, but we always remind them as we're talking to them, as in the police or councils or whatever it is that we're dealing with, they have to follow acts and statutes because they are part of the government. Now, the government are illegal. The government are the legal statute. They create acts and statute, which is legislation, so they must follow it, which means all police must follow it, all council officials or any government officials have to do that. We don't, though. We don't have to follow that. If we understand and know that we are a man or a woman, and then we can stand on our rights, which were given to us by God. It's the difference between rights and benefits. And that's what people get mixed up in when, you know, and argue on the wrong things. When you have your rights to life and freedom. So, you know, but they argue it in the wrong way. Now, that is the law. Whereas, like, obviously, what you've just said about, like, not, what is it you said? Like, you have the right to remain silent and all of them things.
Yeah, and everything you say can and will be used against you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we call here in the United States the Miranda rights.
That's right.
They have to read you your Miranda rights. So you have the right to counsel, all those kind of
But
things.
if you're talking to someone who's really studying on a lawful side and they'll say, let me read your Miranda rights, and say, I don't want any Miranda rights. I'm standing as a man. I don't want anything Miranda rights. Why would I want them?
Okay.
He said, well, he's a rapist. That's how it come from. And I don't want to be classed as the same as a rapist. So I'm standing as a man, right? I'm going to put you in your place and you have no authority to talk to me. A man standing under God, you can give or remove authority to anyone.
Do you, in your knowledge and from your comprehension, can status correction, is that important when it comes into acting in the capacity of a man? Or can you act in the can I act in the capacity of a man as a U.S. citizen?
Absolutely not.
So the answer to the question is you have to change your status. You have to correct your status.
No, you have to change the way you speak. All right. So I know what you're saying, right? And the 14th
on paper, is there anything that needs to be done in their system for them to recognize what you're doing?
No, right? Because if you get to the people who know, and I'm talking about like judges, and they will know, they know the law, even though it's getting suppressed, right? They know what the law is, and they'd probably enjoy you going there and challenging them on the law, right? Talking in the correct way. So whereas like, on the street level, like the cop who's going to be giving you any hassle, then he'll not maybe understand what the difference is between legal and lawful. He's went in there, they've inspected his uniform, they've made sure he's okay, right? Get out there and make sure that you've got Act and Statute 1, 2, and 3, and that you tell everybody about it. And that's probably about as far as his education will go on what is law and legal. And he'll not even understand what he's saying is not lawful, all right, although it's legal. So he'll go out and start hassling people. And what is it legal for? Commerce. That's all that these people are. They're like, literally, they're not police now, right? They're like policy enforcers to actually create income for the government who create the policy. So for instance, right, we'll not say the words of it, right? But if you don't follow these jelly bean guidelines, then they will call it, what is it, like an infringement of the guidelines for the jelly beans, and you will get a fine. And there's people and like at the end of the day, coming back to like lawful, you cannot get a fine until you're being to court and being found guilty, and then they pass a punishment. But they're actually accepting and paying a fine. Some of them 2,000, 5,000, But where was the court case?
You said something too that made me think before. We're supposed to be what is the word? I'm trying to look for the right word. It's not guilty until proven, or you're supposed to be not guilty until proven innocent. But they treat you as if you're guilty to begin with, because you're serving time in jail before you've been convicted of it. There's a lot of people who sit in jail because of their criminal record. They're just sitting in jail before they're actually convicted. And that seems unlawful, because you would have to be actually convicted before you could be punished. But they're being punished before the fact.
Yeah.
So, but it's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But we're guilty until proven innocent is the way that we're. So I look at the lawful side as being innocent until proven guilty, and the legal side as being guilty until proven innocent.
It's 100%, because
just the reverse of it. Just to
look at the language. So when you go into like a court, right, they don't say this anymore. They don't say, how do you plead? Are you innocent or guilty? What they say, right, are you guilty or not guilty? Okay. So it's the language. Are you guilty or not guilty? Basically, you're guilty. So it's there. They never mention the word innocent, where we should always be innocent. And it's coming to like, let's talk about like that mock court, that thing that I was saying. So if you're going into a court, let's just say that, I got stopped for driving as you had, and they're going to go into the court and they call the name out and say, all right, is Mr. Peter Wilson here? Right. Say I go into the court and the judge walks in and they say all stand, which they do, I would stay sitting down. I wouldn't stand up. And then when they said everybody's take a seat, I would stand up. I would do exactly the opposite, right? Because if you do what they're telling you to do, right, this might, and a lot of people don't like it. The mind, it tells them they're being rude. It's not. You're just not creating joinder. You're not following orders. You're not there to be ordered. So you just do the opposite of what they're saying. So then if they say, you know, is Mr. Peter Wilson here? What is that, Mr. Peter Wilson? Remember, they're not just saying it. They're reading it from a sheet of paper, which is, say, a charge sheet, which is dog Latin. It's all in capitals. They're not speaking English. So they're not asking for your name. They're asking you to be tricked into accepting the fact that you are a corporation. Right? Now, it's an implied corporation, right? You're not set up as running a business, but it's implied for the legal status. The company, the court, it'll be a private limited company. They all are. You can check your own local courts. Go to dunsandbradstreet.com and put in there that you can find the company number of anything, right? And they can only go into Duns and Bradstreet if they're in business for profit. So you can check your city, you can check your courthouses, you can check your police stations, everything.
Right. So nonprofits won't be listed on there, only for-profit companies.
Yeah. I mean, my local police station here, which is like Northumberland, not the police station, but like the police service, Northumbria Police Service, is listed on Duns and Bradstreet. It's got the company number on there. It's got like the office address, and it's got the turnover, stating the turnover of 1.6 million in sales. It's got it stated on Duns and Bradstreet. You know, and the courts will be the same. They're all for profit businesses. That's what they are. I mean, even in England, they don't hide it anymore. They call them court business centers.
Right.
You know,
I mean, the way I'm understanding it is those judges are basically bankers.
Yeah.
And they're just directing the flow of current.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's so really interesting when you get into that, when that wordplay, when you start talking about how the currency, the liquidation of currency, how all these words relate back in this water sense.
Frozen assets.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre, like the wordplay that was created for some of these things.
So anyway, back to saying, if they were saying that, you know, is Mr. Peter Wilson here, and I would be like standing up because he told everyone to sit down, you know, I would be holding a claim in my hand. Very important. You hold a claim in your hand. And when he's saying that, and I say, I, a man, Peter, I am here on this matter. So I'm not going to say I am Peter Wilson. I'm not going to agree with what he's asking for, because I know that he's asking for something that's not me. He's not asking for the man, Peter. So I would again state, I, the man, Peter, I'm here on this matter, and I have a claim to put before the court. Now, if in your instance, right, then if you're getting stopped, and you know, if they locked you up or whatever it is overnight or anything like that, then you're going to put a claim in for your time or whatever that claim would be, or even just the time that you were stopped. You know, when they were arresting you with a warrant that was an unlawful warrant, because there wouldn't have been a wet ink signature on the piece of paper. In fact, they wouldn't have had it to show you it, this is the fact. They should have had it there for you to show you it. And there's the judge's wet ink signature on there asking for you to be arrested. And obviously it didn't even exist, you know. And that is how to actually go into court. Now, you've got to remember, the judges, you know, they're going to try and scare you, just like the magician in The Wizard of Oz. You know, he's going to shout at you and scare you and everything to make you shut up and not then back down from it. And it's just, that's just the truth. You know, when you look at it, you know, it's the whole scenario, what they're doing. It's not just about what they're all dressed in black, is celebrating the dead, because it's all a dead entity. It's all a dead fiction, but it's all to put you off as well. You know, they're all there to try and intimidate you and scare you. That's why they're up a height. You know, you're not sitting on a table next to them, right? Yeah. They're up a height there, looking down on you. You know, it's all for reasons. It's all psychological, trying to like put you off and scare you, you know. So, you know, and they start to get angry at you and say, well, look, you know, give me an answer. Are you him or not? You know, and just say, well, I am a man, Peter, on here in this matter. and I have a claim to put before the court. I want to do it as a court of law. Please come and see my claim. And you have to stand as a man. And you know, the worst they can do is start to get angry and say, I'm going to hold you in contempt, you know, if you don't answer the question with a yes or no, because that's what they want. They want you to say yes. You're not going to say no, right? So you just say, well, contempt of what? What kind of contempt is it? Is that going to be criminal contempt, or is that going to be civil contempt? Now, again, this is being as king, asking the questions. You're not being rude. I'm not shouting at him, right? He's just said, you know, to be in contempt. Well, what contempt? Is that criminal contempt, or is that civil contempt? So if he says, well, I'm in a criminal court, you know, you're here on a crime, which you're not actually ever on a crime. It's an offense, by the way. All right. So you have to watch for that term as well. It's an offense. If it's a crime, then it's theft or murder. You've murdered someone, that is a crime. If you've stolen something major, that is a crime.
If you've caused harm. I like to break it just down to causing harm.
That's a crime. Whereas, like, you know, what you've done is an offense against the statute.
Right.
You've
and
broken
statutes and legislation isn't law.
Uh-huh.
They say that they put legislation in the law, but it's not technically law. It's the legal system.
Exactly. It's under the legal society. You know, so say if he said, well, that's like criminal contempt. I say, okay, well, if it's a criminal contempt, so what is it that I've actually done that's criminal in this court? Have I attacked you? Have I hit anyone? Have I spat at anybody? Have I assaulted somebody? Are you going to actually go and testify that I've assaulted someone in front of you in your court?
What harm have I caused?
Exactly. So they can't say that. So, oh, well, you know, is it going to be civil then? Civil contempt? Because if it's civil contempt, that's fine by me. Bring forward the contract that I have broken then under civil law, and we will remedy it. There is no contempt, you know. So it's like, again, we're in court and I'm playing the game and I've batted the ball back into their half. So then it's up to them. So what it is they always want you to accept the legal title. And that's all it's about, a legal title.
Now, everything that you just said, have you done this? Have you practiced this in court, or is this all been in mock sessions?
Court, only in mock court.
Okay, yeah. I'm just wondering what kind of, because I've heard cases where people try to record stuff and they use living man, and things like that, and the judges just want to shoot it down automatically and not.
But it depends on how you actually see it. You see, because what you've got to stay away from is this, like. And it is total bullshit. Sovereign man on the land. It's lower bullshit.
No free man
on the land. Like sovereign citizen. It's actually set up there to actually embarrass you and make you look stupid. And it gives you tiny little insights to think, oh, that's correct. And then it stops because they don't show you the truth of it, which is law.
So you wouldn't you wouldn't, if you were in a court situation, you wouldn't say I'm the living man, Peter. You would just say I'm the man, Peter. Because living man might be putting you in that sovereign citizen, free man on the land category where they're just boxing you in with, you know, and just putting you as a stereotype along with everything that they're trying to knock down.
Yeah. And then, you know, in reality, a free man on the land, it's a title. Okay. And a sovereign citizen, it's a title. And we do not want titles. It's just the same as like a defendant, you know, is a title. So you don't want to go into court and be the defendant because that is a title. That is a legal fiction. As soon as you've accepted the title, you've accepted a legal fiction, you are in the law society and they're going to do whatever they want with you. And it's your own fault because you've accepted it. And you see, I've seen a few videos and you can tell, right, that when they're attacking the judge, it's definitely going to be the wrong thing to do. And when they're trying to, I've seen loads of them are trying to say like, oh, you know, we're in there, the trust. So it's because we're in the trust, then you're the trustee, telling the judge that they're the trustee. It may be true, right, to the deeper level, but you can't prove it. For starters. But also, like, you're going off on that tangent of being, you know, I'm a free man on the land, and I'm, you know, how are you ever going to prove that, first of all, you're a free man on the land, which doesn't exist, but also that the Cestui Que Vie trust exists because you've got the paperwork and the bond number to tell you.
Right. Now, one of the things that I found interesting when I was researching is there's this quick guide to sovereign citizens, and This is from the UNC School of Government, which is the University of North Carolina. And it's been done by 2 detectives in Greensboro, North Carolina, which I live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I'm about 30 minutes away from Greensboro. So this is like something that they had put together that was apparently being sent out to a lot of police officers, a lot of different local municipalities would use this to give to their law enforcement officers so that if they had to deal with anybody under these situations of legal fiction, that they would know what to look for. And they have like information on cases, information on organizations. They bring up the Moorish Nation or the Washita Nation. And then they have identification stuff where they talk about people using their own license plates and identification cards. Buzzwords is what I found interesting. You have strawman, de facto government. So these are things that if you were to say to a law enforcement officer, they're just going to box you into this sovereign citizen category.
Yeah.
Strawman, de facto government, conveyance rather than vehicle. References to UCC, IRS Form 1099 OID, traveling in a commercial capacity, Aboriginal, who is the victim, copyright after the person's name, employer ID number rather than social security number, reference to HJR 192, unindigenous people's seat 215, use of near with zip code, special trust deposits, dishonoring commerce, thumbprints on documents, common law, man on the land, indigenous. I mean, you can see it's just a lot of really interesting things. Even free man is listed on here. What is your oath of office? Brackets around a zip code, domicile, chargeback notices. It gives a lot of really interesting information. UCC 1207, state citizen. So if you were to go and tell a police officer, I'm not a U.S. citizen, I'm a state citizen, they would just box you into these categories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, the filings that they give.
It's good. I've never seen that before. It's looking really good. That's interesting. Yeah. But if you look at it as well, though, all of them are basically titles as well. So they're all titles that could easily be classed as a legal fiction in itself without you knowing what you're doing. Whereas, like, if you're talking about, which is why I was explaining about like the common law, with it being it's just a law that's common to everyone, and they try to make it common law. It's no like magic button that you're like, oh, I'm protected by the common law. And, it's just you have to know and be able to express correctly the law. And as a man,
I would agree with that. And I think a lot of people confuse the term. What they think of as common law is really what people think of as natural law, which would be like the things that we know that we don't have to be told that are wrong. Like the 10 Commandments, things like that, which, really are encompassed by the golden rule or do no harm, but treat people how you want to be treated. Do no harm.
Yeah.
And exactly. that's more the natural aspect, the natural law of man, the natural law of God, cosmic law, however you want to interpret it. But that's what most people are referring to when they think of common law, because common law is not written down. There's not books on common law. Nope. You can see some things about British common law back in the day, but that has nothing or any relevance to anything going on in today, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And which is there are groups now. I was talking to a guy. I think he calls it the Sovereign Project in the UK. But and he's teaching basically like law, and he's the same. He's like, look, stop this common law nonsense. There's no such thing as common law. Learn who you are and what you are under God, and then express the law, because the law is the law, and all they've done is they've actually created this legal society, and it's like it's across the world. I mean, this shows you how big the whole system is. It's just it's the legal society right the way across from as far east as you can get to as far west as you can get. It's just, that's the way it is, you know. But the two biggest ones, when they're obviously between us, is all of the US is like this, and so is all of the UK like this, and they're always talking about legal. What is legal? And they don't care, right? When you're talking to, say, a law enforcement officer, which is they should call it a legal enforcement officer,
right? Or a policy enforcement officer.
Policy enforcement, because that's all they are, you know. But you know, they'll not even understand what the law is, you know. But the way I would always express things and always talk about things is just like, you know, as a man, and that's the only thing I will be, as a man, because under God, a man is the next thing down, is man, and that is that you are the authority, so you can grant and take authority away from whoever was there, you know. And again, when I was doing that course before, the guy who's been doing it for a very long time, he might be from the United States, but he must live or at least spend half the time in Canada. And he has been in court a lot, and he has had a lot of success by being a man and standing as a man. And now he doesn't end up in court because he actually stops it with a written notice, written correctly, which is where you would come in and put the claim into people where you mentioned.
Are you talking about a notice of liability?
It's just a notice.
Not a notice of liability?
No, it's just a lawful notice.
Because you were almost describing this guy that I've interviewed a couple times named Cal Washington.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work.
I've heard the name, but I have never spoke to him.
But I believe he is a dual citizen of the United States and Canada. So that's the reason why when you said United States and Canada and notice. But his thing is these notice of liabilities that he works on. I'll send you some links about, I'll send you some of my interviews I've done and links to his website so you can check out his work.
That would be brilliant. I mean, that sounds very similar. You know, obviously, what I'm not saying is this guy I've studied is the only one who'll know it. And, you know, so it's for sure, if you can express yourself as a man in law and you do it, and you can call it notices of liability or a notice, but it's the same thing. And what you're doing is you're literally telling them what if they've done you harm. So this is where it comes to the language, you know, and people get mixed up with the words, say, trespass and trespassing, you know, whereas like, you know, and you hear this a lot when people want to try and stop bailiffs coming to the houses, and, you know, and say, oh, you're trespassing, you know. It doesn't make sense. It's not a real word. If you're trespassing, then you say, I've got a huge big field and I own a farm and someone's walking through the land. I can say you're trespassing on the land. It doesn't mean they've done anything wrong. It's just, I decided you're not allowed to be on there.
Okay.
Right? There is no law that says you're not allowed to walk across that land. Right? It's just me said, I don't want you on there. You're trespassing. So they say, well, okay, I might be trespassing, but what have I done wrong? And you've stood on me grass. You know what I mean? There's no harm. I haven't caused a harm. When you cause a harm, right? So say, for instance, that you've took property from me, and it could be, right, that the police officers took your car because you didn't have the license. That is a harm, right? They have no authority, and you can remove the authority by saying, look, I as a man remove the authority. You cannot take my property. It's property of I. It belongs to I. Okay.
But you haven't actually, I just had to state, you haven't actually done this with a police officer or a judge. You haven't had these situations.
No. But like I say, he's called John Little, who's like I studied with as well. He has. So you can check him out. That's what his name is, John Little.
Do you have regular correspondence with him?
I was talking to him tonight.
Yeah, maybe if you could, maybe you can connect me and him.
Yeah.
That'd be great, because ultimately, one thing I haven't told you that this is something that I was doing more towards the end of last year, the beginning of, when I say towards the end of 2020 and going into 2021, I was going to try to gather all these different gurus, teachers, groups. Then I realized how hard that was going to be. But what I am going to do is still try to gather together some of the more knowledgeable people that are what's the word that I'm looking for, aren't so egotistical, and willing to share information and learn from others, so that maybe we can make some progress with some, because I look at this as a big piece, like a big puzzle. And the way that I was kind of explaining my idea was that everybody's missing a piece or two of the puzzle. But those pieces that people are missing, other people have. And if we could just gather the right people together, then we may be able to put this puzzle together.
Oh, I'll definitely be able to pass on his details, that's for sure.
But I even like to get you involved in something like that. And in future episodes, do like roundtable conversations where we have one or two other individuals, so that we can have some good banter, maybe even some good disagreements, some good debates.
Oh, okay, definitely.
Challenging what we think we know is how we're able to solidify what we do know.
Yeah, exactly. But like, you know, now and again, you're going to find like the little missing part of the puzzle that can help you get further down the line. You know, I mean, what I will say is that guy I'm talking about, and what I've been doing, like far more sort of like in the last like 2 to 3 months, has been looking at how to handle who I am being on a lawful side, rather than trying to find like the correction of status type of thing. You know what I'm saying, what you were talking about before. Whereas if you know how to be a man, right, on a lawful sense, and how to stand and explain yourself as a man, then you don't need to, I've corrected my status, I've told the government that I am not a citizen, I'm not a legal fiction, that I'm not under the legal society. You know, you don't need to go down that road and explain all of that if you can actually stand there in law and then explain, you know, however it has to be explained, or serve a notice, you know, like we were talking about just a minute or so ago, in a lawful way, you know.
So you don't find you're not finding any relevance, any need to do what people are calling status correction. You just
not when it comes to standing as a man in law.
You just need to know who you are and comprehend the law. And in this sense, I would even say understand the law, because if you understand the law, then you have that full comprehension of it.
Exactly, you know. And yeah, I mean, I tell you, there's loads of different groups doing tons of different things, and you've even got one group in the UK here now, and they've actually, I can't remember how much it is now, they've claimed back something like, might be nearly $500,000 in the last few months back from utility companies and things like that, right? Because they found out that they had no contracts, so what they were being like taking the money off them for all sorts of things was unlawful, and they've actually reclaimed all the money back. And the woman who leads it up, I mean, you know, she's just sitting there. She's got doesn't worry about correction, doesn't worry about status correction, and she just says, "Well, I'm a woman. I'm in law, and I know who I am and what I am, and that's all I'm going to be bothered about," you know. And everybody else is going to be different, and everybody said, "No, you have to correct your status." I'm not saying there's anything wrong in doing it. I'm not saying don't do it, right? I have done it, you know. But what I'm saying is, there's no point doing it if you don't know how to stand as a man.
Right. But you say you have done it?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, that makes sense what you're saying though. Like, it doesn't matter what you do if you don't fully comprehend who and what you are and stand in that capacity.
Yeah.
Because that's what I keep trying to tell people. You can show a piece of paper all you want saying, "Look, I've changed my status." But if you're acting in the capacity of the legal fiction, you've just put yourself back in their jurisdiction.
Exactly.
You've just been tricked and fooled, and they just got you right back in there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just all about, it's literally language. You have to learn, right? Language. And it's the language you're learning. Let's just call it dog Latin for want of a different expression. You have to learn that language, the language that's for the commoners, right? Back in the old Latin times, you have to learn that and know what the difference is between what we speak, English, and what's written down. And when they read that, they read it so it sounds to you like, oh, it's English, it's my name, and it's not. They've read it in capitals, and to them, this is their sick mind. To them, you've read it that way and understood it. You see? So they trick you into, it's called legal entrapment, right? But like, again, you've got to know that to understand and tell them, so look, you're trying to legally entrap me. That is a crime, you know, and that's the way it goes on. But they always want you to tell them your name, you know. Like last year when they tried to arrest me for like keeping my gym open, right? So they all turned up, you know, with the police, and the first thing is, what's your name and what's your date of birth? And it's like, you know, obviously I know they're trying to get joinder, and as soon as they have joinder, then they can arrest you. They can do anything they want with you, right? But don't give them your name, don't give them any details, you know, and then they can't create joinder, so they cannot arrest you.
Now, when you say name, you're talking about the legal name that's on a birth certificate that would include your surname.
But you see, when they say to you, what's your name, right? And so if I just said Peter Wilson, in my mind, I've said Peter lowercase, Wilson lowercase, right? I've said it, but they write it on their little piece of paper, whatever, or they do it on the pad or whatever, all caps. So they've converted it to Dog Latin straight away.
So instead of you saying I'm Peter Wilson, and you just say I'm Peter.
Yeah.
So then the last name, the surname, is part of what ties us into that system of being a legal fiction.
It is, yeah. But it's also they can do it with both names, right? But all I would ever say is I'm a man, Peter, or I'm a man, and I wouldn't go any further than that.
What if you just said I'm Peter?
Well, as long as you said I'm Peter, but it would still be like making sure that you state you're a man, because you want to be a man under God and a man under law.
So you think stating man is an imperative, important key point.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what they want, and all is your name. And then if you tell them your name, then they want your date of birth, which no matter what, I mean, before they're coming to arrest you and they're stopping and saying, well, what's your date of birth? I mean, if there was a major problem and you had to arrest you because there was a major problem, what you've done, does it matter? You know, what you want to know when you're going to buy me a card?
No, yeah. If they're going to arrest you for murder, or they've just watched you commit a crime where you're causing harm to people, they're not worried about those details. They're going to arrest you, period, and then they'll worry about that stuff later. Because they know they got to apprehend you so that you don't cause any more harm.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, otherwise they're liable in a lawful manner if they allow for that individual to continue harming people.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So it's all just about like them creating joinder, which is just authority. Another word of authority, their authority under you, which is why, you know, they will always ask as well, when, you know, you were talking about those Miranda rights, they have similar here, but they call them PACE, and they'll read you the rights out, and then they'll ask you if you understand. Right. Well, you would never give them your name, so they wouldn't read them out. But, you know, when it says like, do you understand? If you say yes, what you've actually said is you stand under their authority over you. Again,
right. Which is why I was saying if you understand law, then you're standing under the law and you actually have a real full comprehension of the law, but you don't want to understand a police officer.
Or understand legal.
Or a judge or anything in a legal capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
These are just some of the things that I've been trying to learn. So I say some of this out loud so I can make sure that that what I'm learning is correct, and to solidify what I feel like I know. And to pull up the etymology of joinder, the act of joining together, usually in a specific legal senses. So like having your first name and your surname connected together is a joinder. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. And it's like your surname is the legal fiction, because your surname is what they create.
Right.
That's what a lot of people don't realize. You know, if you look at the birth certificate, you have a given name or names, right? Whichever it would be. Just say one name.
Some people call it the Christian name.
Yeah. But then the surname, that's what they created.
Which is your family name.
Yeah, which is now known as your family name, but it was created by them. It wasn't like it used to be, you know, back in the day when it would be like, you know, you would be like Peter Farmer because that was what you were, right? And that's, you know, or if it comes in, you know, the Smith, Peter Smith, because they were all blacksmiths.
Or your dad might have been named John and you're Peter of John.
Johnson. Yeah,
Peter,
Johnson, son of John.
Or yeah, Johnson. Yeah, son of John. So yeah, there's a lot of yeah, it was, and when it goes back to the Roman history, and I believe I got a lot of this from Romney Stewart, and his partner, as far as a little bit more of that language. So pretty interesting. When you really look at the complexity of all this, it's been well thought out, and that's where, like I told you before we started recording, you had mentioned having some people in your life that are familiar with some of the things that you talk about, and they don't take any seriousness in what you say, and that's been one of the things that for me to go up to like an everyday people, because people is both plural and singular. So for me just to go up to an everyday people and try to explain the legal fiction without really being able to fully back it up with factual evidence to prove to them, we just look kooky. And that's kind of crazy. And that's kind of what this whole thing has been designed to do, like with that sovereign citizen report that I was showing you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, if you look at things like that sovereign citizen thing, I'll have to look for that. It's quite funny, that. But like, they try and actually make you look stupid though as well. It's about like, well, if you, but which is the same as everything. It's what the human nature that they've made us all now. If you question anything, then you're the weird one. You know, if you just don't get on with it, right, which is what we're in now. Well, if you question it and say there's something wrong, then you're a blah blah idiot.
Well, you're a conspiracy theorist or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go ahead while I'm thinking about it, sending you that report on Telegram just so you have a copy of it.
Yeah, there it is. I'll have a look at that.
Cool.
Good.
So another thing that I wanted to get into, because the status correction, you say there's when you say you corrected your status, but you also say that there's no reason for you to do that if you don't really know who you are and know how to act as a man or a woman. What did you do to correct your status, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, right. So if you look at, I'm actually still in the middle of a second part of it now that we've actually discovered, but it's kind of different. So I'll explain what. It's not the status correction or status correction. I've done that bit. Now we're actually investigating how to actually get access to our trust.
Your Cestui Que Vie account or your creditor account?
Yeah.
Or your Christian account. I've heard it be called a lot.
Yeah. Your treasury account. I think they call it a treasury direct account in the United States. But, you know, basically through the Cestui Que Vie, which when I've done the correction of status, it actually states on there, and it's still on the, we looked at it last time on the government website in the UK, right? The Cestui Que Vie Act 1666. It's still in force today. And it states, unless you tell them, they'll always consider you dead. Okay. So it's on there. So basically what we have is we'll have a series of, it's a kind of affidavit, but it's a statement of truth. All right. And it's put together like notices, really, what we were talking about before. And it states to all of the different levels of government that we are not dead at sea, that as per the 1666 Cestui Que Vie Act, we are here to tell you that we have returned from the dead. We have returned from being dead at sea, and we are in fact alive. And you cannot presume or assume any longer that we are dead.
Yeah, that would seem like it would be part of status, like a status correction, but this is something that you guys are stumbling upon, so it's adding to what you've already done.
The second part is about like getting into the trust, because the it depends on what you mean. Like, the way I see it is like your status correction is like you telling them that you, and this is what we mentioned before, we are in the private because we are a man living private, i.e. we are not under acts and statutes because we are a man. So as correction of status, okay, So, well, actually, what you do is you put forward your documentation, which you can get notarized, which is a court official who notarizes the documentation to say what you say is true. So it's true by eye, and then you present it to the levels, including the church, because it has to be ecclesiastical. And then you go to the treasury, because obviously they're part of it with the trust. Then you go to the police, because that's the law enforcement, and the judiciary as well, who's the head judge. And that's the levels of government that you actually acknowledge and send to correct your status and say, this is basically who we are. And it tells you that in the UK anyway, on the government website, that unless you tell them you're alive, you'll always be classed as dead. So all we're doing is correcting it and telling them that. And then we give them the chance or the opportunity to actually argue, and we give them 40 days and 40 nights to actually return an affidavit to us to state that we're not telling the truth. So they can turn around and say, actually, no, you are dead. But so
it's it's how asinine it sounds to go in front of like a body of law or government entity to tell them that you're alive, when it would be impossible for you to walk in there if you weren't alive.
I know.
And then when you look at some of the things that's in the Cestui Que Vie, it's crazy, because it's like remaining beyond sea for 7 years together and no proof of their lives. It's like, I'm not sure if people have actually taken the time to read some of the things that are listed in here, but it's literally like around this time period was when in 1666 is when they had the, I don't know if it was accidental fire. Some people say it was a sacrifice, but the burning of London.
Yeah.
And a lot of things were lost, damaged. I mean, there was a lot of like disease going on back then too. So they weren't sure who was still alive. So they legally declared everybody dead until those people lawfully claimed to be alive, or lawfully claimed them to be dead. And you had to, I don't know how that would work, but, and then we talked about this last time, ever since this has been enacted in 1666, every single monarch has put their stamp of approval on it, and it is still currently in legislation, and it's currently in effect in British law. This is the legislation.gov.uk site, so people can look this up for themselves and see that the current Queen of England is totally cool with this.
That's like, you could not make it up. It's like literally like you've just like took it from a film. It's just so crazy,
The proof of deceases of persons beyond the sea or absenting themselves upon the lives of states do depend. And that's what the Old English, from when it was written. Because they didn't even change that language. It's, if you look through, even the word mischief is spelled in Old English here.
Yeah.
For remedy of which mischief so frequently happening to such lessers or revisioners.
But if you compare it, like, the 1666 events, compare it to events now. So a lot of people say that the bubonic plague was orchestrated in a lot by, infesting certain areas where it was densely populated with vermin that would spread disease to people,
Almost like what happened in 2020.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Compare it to what we're going through.
Yeah.
So then, right on top of that, so they've got this disease happening through 1666, but right then it was in London, so all over London. So then they've created this act, right? So they're going to enforce this act upon everybody. Now, this isn't just all of the normal people. This is the people that own land. Okay, so the ones that are like, yeah.
From your knowledge, how does the Cestui Que Vie apply to somebody in the United States? Because from the perspective of our history that we've been taught, is we got away from British rule, that we're no longer a territory of Britain. Now, it looks like between the War of 1812, or really just since the Revolutionary War, then 1812, then the Act of 1871, the bankers were able to bankrupt the United States enough to where they did what they did to France.
Mm-hmm.
And then just encapsulate them back into the system. So where most people think that we're free from the British Empire, we're still indebted to the Crown Incorporated.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's easy to see, and if you go through the actual the rulings that you've got, fair enough, we've got the 1666 Act, which is like on the government website, but you also have, you just mentioned it when you read that thing out that you sent to me, the House Joint Resolution 192, and other things where you've actually got rid of the gold standard from, was that 1933 or 31?
Well, we officially got rid of the gold standard officially in 1971 under Richard
71,
Nixon.
but when they come and took the gold off them, actually
Up
took
in
it
the
away.
United States, it was around it was early 1930s. I want to say it was 1933, but I'm not sure that's the correct date.
I think it was 31 or 33, but I think 33.
That's when they did the creation of securities, the creation of the Security Exchange Commission, the Banking Regulation Act, and the creation of Social Security numbers. All of that trickery, and then they were making the United States citizens sell their gold back to the federal government during times of war.
And then if you look up Colonel Mandel House, okay, and look at the letter that Colonel Mandel House wrote to Woodrow Wilson about what they were doing, and then you'll see when they were creating the Social Security number, in his words, well, everybody should go and look at it, and then they can make their own mind up and they can read it. I'm not telling them, what happened. And he actually said, we have plausible deniability, so we'll be able to deny whatever you try and question us on. We'll be able to plausibly deny it, but we will just be rich beyond our wildest dreams.
What was his name? Mandel?
Colonel Mandel House.
And it would
Mandel.
Would it be in 1933 when all that took place?
31 or 33, yeah, but around that time. And it's his letter to Woodrow Wilson.
Let me see here. Letter. In the House letter to Wilson. See, some of this stuff I have heard has been debunked as not being true, because I've even heard there's quotes from like some presidents that weren't really even apparently correct quotes. Let's see here. So I'm at archives at Yale. I'm just trying to see if it has this information in here where I can pull it up for other people to see it. No, but I will try to find it. I'm not going to try to search for it while we're on any more than I've already looked. But
that the only tie-in, really from the Cestui Que Vie Act of the UK's one that you could put to the US is going to be the Social Security number. That's where and the birth certificates when they started creating them, which was, it was late 1800s, early 1900s, and they started really pushing everyone to get the birth certificates made.
Right. And then it was more towards the 30s that they were able to really kind of get people to be on board with the birth certificates. And then once they had the majority of people on board with the birth certificates, then, they had the timely market crash, depression, and then leading us into what we see here with Executive Order 6102. And it was on 1933. It was signed in April 5th and enacted May 1st, something like that. But it was April 5th, 1933, that the forbidding of hoarding of gold when the within the continental United States. And the executive order was made under the authority, and this is the other one too, under the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917, as amended by the Emergency Banking Act. That's the Banking Act that I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the Emergency Banking Act, you had the confiscation of gold, the creation of the Security Exchange Commission, the SEC, that monitors all securities, the creation of the Social Security number and Social Security as a whole, which, yeah, it's crazy when you think about that. And then a lot of the people that really were arguing against this are dead now.
Yeah.
And history has been written by the victors, and we're not getting truthful information. So like
No.
the history that we've been taught in school, for the nicest way to say it, is just bullshit, propaganda bullshit. There is some truth to it, but like here in the United States, we celebrate Christopher Columbus. We have Columbus Day, like he was some good guy who did all
It's
these
like one of the
great
biggest
things.
murderers you can
Right,
ever
he
meet.
discovered Americas, but he didn't discover Americas. He killed a bunch of like indigenous people. Like he pretty much like did what the Germans did to the Jews on various islands around Central America.
Yeah. Oh,
And we
terrible.
celebrate the guy. We got a
Yeah.
holiday for him. And that's the history that we're
Crazy.
taught. We're not taught about the deception that took place. We're not taught about that during the Civil War, when there was supposed to be a reconstruction of restoring the nation back to the original republic, the federal government took over. And then if you go back and you look at the founding fathers, the big argument was federalist versus anti-federalist. And the compromise was the Second Amendment, which was the militias that would keep the federal government in check. But then after like the Civil War time period, then they started making militias like it was a bad thing. Started putting out the narrative that it was, that those are the crazy kooks. Those are the people that don't need to have guns. We need to take gun rights away.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry for the rant, just giving you a little bit of American perspective, because I am the American pit bull.
Yeah, but that's exactly like it there when you're tying it onto the Cestui Que Vie Act, because it's just a different language. Obviously, we haven't got guns like legally or lawfully in the UK, but you still are allowed to carry what they would call arms. Okay, but now what they've done is I'm not saying like knife crime is pleasant or acceptable or anything, but what they've done, the same as what they've done with these gun incidents in the United States. They've made these knife crime things in the UK to make sure that now you're not, they're saying the acts and statutes is they're all sized. You're not allowed to carry this or do this or anything like that. With a bladed weapon. But in reality, right, the actual law states that every man in England should not only carry his arms but be able to use them. And he should train in using them, and that's the law, right? But what they're saying is like they've demonized. I'm not saying go and stab someone's good, but if you notice though, right? Well, you probably don't see it, but we hear a lot of gun crimes that are in America, and then it's like, oh, we've got to get rid of the guns. That's a coincidence. In England or in the UK, right? What they'll have when they have a terror attack, right? It's always with a knife. Isn't that coincidental? It's always with a knife. It's always with a crazed person who goes and stabs a load of people.
I still figured there would be a black market and there would be guns in the UK, and the criminals would be utilizing them, and they would be committing crimes with the guns.
There's tons of guns in the UK. Tons of guns in the UK.
But I'm not hearing about crimes being committed with the guns.
No.
You don't ever hear about that. But I mean, I would imagine that the criminals, or at least some of them, are using a gun to commit crimes.
Well, yeah, all the time. There's people get shot all the time.
Right, because I mean, the everyday individual people is not going to have a firearm on them.
No.
And they always say you don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight. It's not a good way of playing. But you can bring a knife to a knife fight.
Yeah.
Then it's a knife party.
There you go. But that's what they do, is they always like put it there. There's these massive knife crimes, and there's crazy people run around chopping people up. We should take all the knives away from everyone. You can't even buy them in a shop, like in a kitchen shop. You have to prove your ID.
Is that what's happening in the UK?
Yeah, for a
Okay,
long
so
time now.
yeah, because so here in the United States, I mean, obviously the government is not going to take away our gun rights because that's not going to go over good with the American public. But if
Hmm.
the American public is fed up with guns and the majority of people are like, take these rights away from us, then they've been able to achieve what they wanted to achieve, but they didn't have to look like the bad guys doing it. And that's kind of
Exactly.
the same thing that's going on there in the UK.
Exactly.
I know it's getting late. I want to be respectful of your time. I have one more really good thing to kind of like touch on, and you kind of mentioned some of it. Private versus public.
Hmm. Yeah.
What is
The
the importance to you of that statement?
Well, the way that we look at it is where we've done our like status correction. Really, that's where it really comes into play, but also on the trust side as well. So the more I'm looking into it, and we've pulled it into being on a private trust, being in the private, i.e. in the status correction, which I'll explain the difference, but also still standing as a man in the law. Because if you're standing as a man in law and you're in a private trust and you're also standing in the private, as in you've declared yourself to the government and the Cestui Que Vie Act that you're not dead, that you are actually alive, then you're a private man living privately. Okay, now again, it's not that isn't going down the line of you accessing this apparent Cestui Que Vie trust where all the money is supposed to be, right? But it's you living in the private, which is very interesting now because we're dealing a lot with people now who are wanting to correct the status, to move away from being public. And if you're a person, you're public. So they're now all saying, I want to be a private man, a private woman, and also want to set up a private trust. So the reason why they want to set up a private trust is to protect themselves more and more from what is seeing much more government interference in people's private lives, personal lives. And it's not just all about property, right, or money, but I'll explain the whole concept. The Earl of Marlborough recently, I can't remember when it was, a couple of years ago maybe, and when he died and he passed on his estate, which was worth £350 million, he didn't pay, or no, he wouldn't have paid, but his family didn't pay anything at all in tax. No inheritance taxes, no death taxes, nothing like that. And the reason being was because everything they had was in a private trust. And the trust was quite old. It wasn't they had just set it up. So this has been going on for a long time. So we have now been setting up or helping people set up private trusts and also putting their business in the private. So I've got to be careful what I say, but because of these new regulations that people are putting in now, we have medical staff, right? And if you've got any medical people, you contact me and I'll be able to help you and put you in contact. We've got huge groups of setting up private medical trusts, right? So a lot of people are not allowed to go to doctors anymore. You're not allowed to go to hospital anymore. Well, we have private trusts that are going to be set up, which is going to be the equivalent of, because the National Health Service in the UK is a trust. It's not a company, it's a trust. So we're now having huge groups of disenfranchised medical staff, doctors, nurses, dentists that are going to be providing medical care for people, right? But it's not like private as you'd imagine. I've got to pay 10 times as much to go private. They are just in the private, so they don't have to worry about acts and statutes or not being allowed to see somebody because they didn't have a type of card that they could show them, or any medical history that they wanted to disclose or not disclose, if you get my meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where it's going. It's an in bigger picture than what it used to be 2 years ago, public or private. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it seems like a lot of people are starting to learn about it. And I mean, I'm trying to look at it from both a legal perspective and a lawful perspective, because there are ways that you can create these things that they're basically bulletproof. But if you're not sure what you're doing, you may not be as bulletproof as you think. And it goes back to this quote from John D. Rockefeller when he says, own nothing, control everything.
Yeah.
Because on paper, John D. Rockefeller didn't own anything. Everything that he had was, and this is what most rich people do, is they put it in a trust.
A private trust.
Right. Well, and there is a difference. And there is a difference with a private business too. Like, so you can't be open to the public and call yourself a private business.
But you can be a private members association.
That's exactly what I was getting to. You would have to create your business in a private membership association capacity. So that way, like, if, let's say, for example, you have a restaurant, then your door is closed to the general public. In order for you to come, you have to be a member to that private membership association. You agree to those terms, and that takes you out of legal jurisdiction. So whatever takes place in that building is allowed by law, because the individuals of the association that's private agreed.
Yeah.
So that's how a doctor who necessarily did not go to school for medicine, but understands holistic medicine and natural medicines, can go and tell his patients, I didn't go to school to be a doctor, because you had to be upfront. You had to be transparent with that. You can't tell people I'm a licensed doctor and then operate in the private, because you're lying and you're causing harm. You would have to let those individuals know that I'm not a licensed doctor. I do natural holistic medicines. I teach, or I practice in the private, and it's not available publicly. So if you agree, then these are the terms. And then once people agree, then that doctor can act as a doctor, because you've agreed, and it's all being done in a private capacity.
Exactly. So now, if you look at like what's been pushed on the insanity in the last 2 years, now we have licensed doctors that are getting unlicensed because of their views on the 2 years. So now they are going to be putting them, and they are like fully qualified. Like I've got in my group, I've got doctors, nurses, like dentists, everything fully qualified, have been open for years. And now they are going to be moving into the private, setting up private members associations in a private trust. And we're trying to get them to group together so we can get an umbrella of a private health trust, all right, that people will be allowed to go to and become members of.
Think about it like this in a sense too, because this is an idea that I've been toying around with. You have one trust that's being formed, like a main kind of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have these franchise trusts in the private, so that you can interconnect them.
Mm-hmm.
And then with an interconnection of private trust and private membership associations, you could have private society, private dealings, private business. People can support people in the private. People can support, versus supporting public businesses. So it gives an opportunity for us to create our own ecosystem for barter abilities, trades. I mean, in that sense, if you had a private membership association franchise, you could create a cryptocurrency or a digital currency and have everybody agree that is what people want to use to transact with. Because back in the day, people used to agree to use puka shells.
Yeah.
These were a form of currency.
Yeah.
So whatever people agree upon. So, we could create our own system outside of the system, because that's one of a lot of people's biggest fears is, I can't use a bank and I can't. Well, it's like, no, we can create our own.
Exactly. And that's the biggest tool that if you look at it now, if you step outside the system, that's not right. If you're a naughty boy, then they're going to stop your money, right? They're going to close your bank account.
Right.
They're going to stop you getting access to money and food. And that's their club that they're hitting them over the head with now, that everyone's terrified. Oh, if I stand up against the tyranny, then I'll lose all my money.
But if people know there's an alternate system they can step into with like-minded people,
it's bubbling.
It can change. I know. And these kind of videos, help to plant seeds and water seeds with other individuals. I mean, the whole idea of acting in that private, because even myself, I'm going to take a lot more focus with my content to go more on the private side. Because obviously what we're doing here, that's going to be uploaded to YouTube and other public forums, is we can't say is private because we're making it available to people publicly.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also too what I've been starting to comprehend is that if you're on YouTube sitting here trying to tell everybody how to be Neo and get out of the Matrix, you're gonna cause a problem for yourself.
Yeah.
Especially if you know how to tell people how to be Neo and get out of the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing that on a private capacity, no issues.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't say that you couldn't become enough of a threat that they could find issues to make, because I feel like if somebody really had the keys to get out and they started making copies of that key, even in the private, too many people get out, the private becomes the public, and that's not what they want. Because that's kind of the idea of, for me, with the creating a private membership association would be that the private membership association would become so big, that it would just become the public.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, right, and this is what it would bring it down to, because if we go back, right, and just take away the kings, right, we'll not get into sort of like the history of where they come from, because there's loads of great sort of like stories of where it all come from, but take it back to the communities, the shires in England, like what they said. So them shires in England, everyone would be looking after each other, right? So like, unless you're like, a schizophrenic psychopath, you're not going to get up in the morning and decide go and kill everybody in the shire, right? That's just kind of like, I know now and again people do crazy things, but
you don't want to shit where you eat. That's
exactly
what we say. You don't want to shit where you eat.
So they're going to look after each other, and they're going to build up the community. They're going to make sure that you're safe because you're going to make sure I'm safe, right? And it's going to build up like the safe community for everybody in it. Now who needs a government then? You don't need a government.
But that's going from bottom up, not top down. We're a top down system. We need to think about local and state, or local and territories, local and provinces, up to like the national or state level, but start with you where you're at. Exactly. Most people wouldn't have a problem paying taxes and wouldn't call taxation theft if they knew that the tax money was being utilized to improve the infrastructure of their local area. Where they see it, and even where they could even potentially choose where those funds go.
Exactly. Well, then it's not only fair, but it's common sense. Well, what we'll do is, like, he's got a lot of money, so we're going to take more from him. Now, you haven't got anything, so we're going to leave you alone, but you can help us later, right? Now, once we've got this money together, we've decided that this road needs to be built because all the cars are getting stuck, or all the horses are getting stuck when they go through, common sense type of stuff. Now, again, I know that's simplistic, but it truly is simplistic if you really look at it. And what I think is they'll try and make it look complicated and scary.
And we overcomplicate it too. I mean, human nature, we overcomplicate things that are simple.
So you could literally build it up on a private basis from the bottom up, like you said, and then you're making a cocoon over like the general private trust, and then have your private members associations from within it, and it's happening now. And
now you want to hear something really cool that it'd be really neat to see how this could start applying in other countries, other nations, but in the United States and in Wyoming, they have passed a law. There's something in cryptocurrencies and the blockchain technology is called a DAO, DAO, and it stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Sounds exactly what it sounds like. Nobody's in charge. It's a decentralized organization. So they've made these legal in the state of Wyoming if you register with your business with the state. Somebody has bought 40 acres of land and is forming a DAO using the 40 acres of land. Take that concept even further and make that 40 acres of land DAO a PMA. And you've just created a legal private city in the United States, in the state of Wyoming.
Yeah.
How cool would that be if you start seeing more nations legalizing decentralized autonomous organizations, and then you take a DAO and you put it in a PMA.
Yeah,
it would be powerful, man.
It's like literally, what is it you want? I want peace on earth.
Right. I just want to be left alone. I don't want to be a part of your system no more. I just want to opt out. I don't want the rights and benefits and privileges. I just want to be on my own. I want to be responsible for my actions. I want to be accountable for the things I do. Which I know, like, that's a lot easier said than done. And I've had this argument with a lot of people when it comes to legal fiction, because when it comes to rights and benefits and privileges, one thing that never gets talked about is the fact that we're a limited liability society. So people don't have to be fully responsible for the things they do and say. You know, back when we didn't have the statutory laws, if you owed somebody money, you were put in a debtor prison. Today, we're not put in debtor prison because we have limited liability. So when a lot of people, I think, when they look at the legal fiction, they're looking, one, to get out of trouble, two, thinking they're going to get rich off these trusts, and aren't going in it with the idea of being accountable for their actions and actually having to take responsibility for and put their big boy or big girl pants on.
Yeah.
And take the training wheels off the bike.
Yeah.
You know, and some people just aren't ready to be responsible for themselves. You know, it's one of the sad things that I've come to the realization of.
That's the thing. If you want to get mixed up, if you really want to get mixed up in that world of private and also correcting your status means you are now going to look after your own affairs and you're going to be a grown up. Right. So that is really what you're actually doing. And then you're telling everyone that that's what you're doing. You know, I mean, the thing is, the way of looking at it now, from what you're saying there, and compared to what I was like talking to a dentist today was talking, and he was so excited because he's talking to other groups of dentists who can now be on a private trust to do a PMA where they can actually be under that umbrella and not have to worry about whatever silly rule that's put in place now, or else they're not allowed to see a patient with a toothache.
Well, and then with the idea of a DAO, those doctors could form a decentralized autonomous organization of private doctors that work together and then have that legal protection. Because, I mean, in that way you're acting in a lawful manner, but you're immune to the legal effects.
Exactly. Where you
and
don't
that's really
need the
what
legal.
you want. When people are talking about diplomatic immunity, really what they're talking about is legal immunity.
Yeah, well, it is really. It's immunity from the legal society and the legal nonsense, because it's getting more and more nonsensical. You know, by the day. You know, we'll just this is what is it now? The 8th? Is it the 8th today? December?
Yeah, we're like down to like the wire when it comes to 2021, man. There's not much left to it.
Yeah, so like coming up to Christmas, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to clamp down everything in the UK. They did it last year, and he's already done an announcement now. Apparently, there's too many of these. You know, what you put your suit in.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I'm going to be doing a video tomorrow, which by the time people watch this, will already be out. But it's going to be on the Omicron variant, and I've found some pretty interesting news and ideas and thoughts that are going to be coming out of this, and it actually might be some really, really good news. From my comprehension, there's a lot of doctors, even though I'm like, how are you even identifying a variant when you're not really able to identify the actual supposed one, right? Yeah. So, but they're saying that this could become the dominant strain, and it has very mild effects. Like, it's not hurting people. It's just people are getting a little sick and they're not dying. That's a consensus I'm gathering. And if this becomes the dominant strain, then from a lot of what I've been hearing from some people, and this is kind of backing up, and it may start coming out in media. You may start seeing an end to all this banana crap, all these vacations and forced jobs. It may happen in March, possibly, if this weaker strain can become the dominant one. And there's already a lot of verbiage going out on the mainstream news, not necessarily on the television portion of it, but in the mainstream printed news and on the internet, that this could become the dominant strain. And then it's been said very mild symptoms. So
I've heard a lot about like the mild symptoms thing. So I mean, if they've got it now so that they can like, you know, make a few 100 billion every year by the boosters for this new thing, then maybe that's what's going to settle them down and put them back in that cage.
Yeah, but no, dude, I mean, I would have said last year, yeah, but you know, I mean, Joe Rogan did something really awesome, man, when he brought that guy from CNN on his show, and like now he's starting to bring other people on where they're talking about the mainstream news outlets receiving money from pharmaceutical companies, how the news outlets are in the pharmaceutical companies' pockets. And then when you look at something like ivermectin, it was all the talk about it being a horse drug when it was already approved for humans. The company that put it out for humans won a Nobel Prize, and more than 50% of the Senate and Congress were treated with it. Japan has made it legal, like a not just not legal, but Japan has made it like mandatory that is being utilized there. From what I'm starting to comprehend, Pfizer is putting out an alternative to it. So they want to make it look bad because they want people to buy their drug. And then all the pharmacists, this is my big issue and this kind of circles back to natural law. All that they've done with this world is take the natural and turn it into something artificial. And all the pharmaceutical companies are trying to take everything natural on this planet and make a synthetic version and patent it. And then tell you the real thing doesn't work. So that they can make money off of their patents until their patent runs out.
Which takes it back right the way to like the Rockefeller Institute that actually created the medicine industry. Okay. And then if you look back where, you know, all these healers that, you know, could have been in a private members association healing the public were all of a sudden witches and we best go burn them.
How crazy is this world we live in, Peter?
But it's so easy to see the story, isn't it? Though, like of what they're trying to do when you think about going backwards in history and then coming up to now, and you think it's no different.
No, I agree. It's just that's what they say. There's really nothing new under the sun. No, it's just we forget our history. We don't, and it's not our fault necessarily. I mean, we're being taught false information, but if we don't know what happened, just like when I was saying about status correction before we started recording, and me liking have evidence and proof, if we don't really know what we're correcting, then what are we correcting? You know, and if you can't really, if the truth has to be hidden in plain sight, then there's got to be something in some sort of writing somewhere, in some book somewhere, or a document somewhere that states this stuff. You know, I mean, there are little bits of things that could be put together that would be, what's the word they use when they have evidence that's not really solid, but
like hearsay.
There's a word, I just can't think of what it is. All right, well, we've had a really great conversation. We're at like 10 minutes less than 2 hours. We were talking for like 15 minutes before we started recording. So I know it's past 11 o'clock your time. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up this one. I definitely want to obviously do more. So I'm going to have links down below. And I mentioned to you the idea about roundtable conversations with other people and just some more conversations along this line, because I thoroughly enjoyed it. Hope you have as well.
I loved it.
So I'm going to have links down below for your YouTube channel, 2021 Return to Democracy. So I encourage people to subscribe. There's also smashadebt.com that you could check out. And these are going to be linked down below, and claimyourstrawman.com. I did want to ask you real quick, Peter, on your YouTube channel, there's two other links. One takes us to this book, Redemption Manual 5.0 series. The other one takes us to Commercial Warfare, We the People versus Despotism.
Despotism.
How did you say that? Despotism.
Both of them are books about they actually relate to the United States more than anything, and they are about correcting your status and actually how to see, you know, a lot of what we were talking about. But
Okay.
that one especially, redemption value, it's some brilliant information, and those a lot of those terms that you were actually saying, like from that other one, whatever the one you sent me, I can't see it down there. You know, they use some of them terms about like the UCC one and, you know, the secure party creditor and stuff like that. So it's really interesting. I mean, it's about this thick. You know, it's not bedtime reading.
Yeah, I'll try to find out there's, because obviously this is from the UK version of Amazon, so I'll try to find out there's, or if you're looking at this, make sure that you're searching on the US version if you're in the US or wherever country, and see if it's available to you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these should be available, and just change your I'm just pulling up the link straight from your YouTube channel. But so I'm gonna have links down below for all that, and I will include links down below for the Cestui Que Vie and also for this Executive Order 6102. So if people want to check that out, not all of the information on Wikipedia is bad, and not all the information is false, but you definitely got to like make sure that you're fact checking a lot of the stuff, and especially if you're dealing with somebody who's controversial, then you might be dealing with a lot of lies and bullshit straight from Wikipedia. But not everything on there is a waste of time. So I don't want anybody commenting like, why are you talking about Wikipedia? So they do it. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to add, my friend, before we wrap up today?
Well, just thank you for everybody for watching, and thank you for bringing me on. I've thoroughly enjoyed, great conversation, swapping some great information and ideas. I've loved it.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, I appreciate it. And if you could bear with me, I'm just going to wrap up and stop recording. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, if you're watching this all the way through and you still haven't seen our first conversation together, I definitely encourage you to do so, and it will be linked down below. Make sure you check out all the links, and make sure you check out Peter Wilson's YouTube channel, the man Peter's YouTube channel. Make sure you check out his YouTube channel and subscribe. And as always, make sure that you hit that like button. It helps other people to be able to find these videos in a YouTube algorithm flow. And I always will encourage you to be the change by practicing change.